Miss Panda. I am Amanda Shong Blodgett, Miss Panda. My special guest today is the author of the new cookbook, The Food of Taiwan, Recipes from the Beautiful Island. Cathy Erway, she is also the author of The Art of Eating In, and she has a blog called Not Eating Out in New York. She is also a radio show host on the Heritage Radio Network, and her show is called Eat Your Words. Well, reading Cathy's book actually makes me feel very hungry because it's just like taking a virtual food tour with her in Taiwan. And here is our special guest today, Cathy Erway. Hello, Cathy. Ni hao.
Ni hao, Amanda. How are you?
Very good. Thank you. Well, it's really nice to have you on the show and share your new book with us. And, you know, you talk about food, you write about food, you have a rooftop farm actually, and that you interview chefs and cookbook authors, and you also explore culture through food. So my first question for you is, do you think about food all the time?
Yes, I do. I think I was always really obsessed with food, but I didn't know how to target this obsession or how to kind of put it to more thoughtful uses, hopefully, than just eating.
Okay.
So, and, going to the latest, coolest restaurant seemed like the normal way to kind of explore your obsession for food. And I did that a lot, in my early 20s until I realized that this is really draining my wallet. So I wanted to explore other ways to get into food, like cooking.
Okay. I know. I mean, especially I think when you start cooking on your own or at home, you start to feel you probably have a passion, because I can definitely feel the passion in your book. You love food, you talk about food, you cook food, you do food experiment with your friends, and then when you do a book tour, I know you also teach people how to cook. What a great way to have a, the book tour. That was really wonderful. And then your book, The Food of Taiwan, actually, when we talk about Taiwan, people will think about, well, something about China, and that's where we're going to talk about it. And then, like, when we talk about China, there are 22 different provinces and 5 regions, and every one of them has its own specialty of food. For example, when we talk about Hong Kong, we think about dim sum. When we talk about Sichuan food, we talk about spicy dishes like kung pao chicken. And then when we talk about the northern cooking of China, then we talk about all the buns, dumplings. But your book, The Food of Taiwan, puts Taiwan on the spotlight. Taiwan, the Republic of China. Of course, people know Taiwan and China are separated politically. But Taiwan, let's talk about Taiwan a little bit. Taiwan is a very small island, and it is slightly smaller than the combined area of Maryland and Delaware. And then it has a huge population of 23 million people in Taiwan. And it is about 100 miles away from the southeast part of mainland China. So for this new situation, I think a lot of people will think about Taiwan food and Chinese food. What are the difference? People might think about Taiwan, the food of Taiwan, when they look at they're holding a cup of bubble tea. They will think, oh, maybe this is Taiwan because bubble tea is from Taiwan. But there are definitely much more dishes or beyond that. And your book opened the door for everyone to join you to discover the food of Taiwan. And I would like to know what inspires you to explore and write about the food in Taiwan and to share Taiwan cuisine with the world.
Well, thanks so much for asking. I think you did a great job of kind of exploring how, and I think like right now people are even more understanding that China is so vast and has so many different regional cuisines, and people from all over are understanding, what is Sichuan cuisine, what makes Hunan cuisine, what is Cantonese or Shanghainese cuisine, all kinds. So, this is a great starting point. But I wanted to explore Taiwanese food because it's where my mom grew up, and she was born and raised in Taipei. And my grandparents lived there when I was young. So it's a place that was close to me. I also spent a college semester abroad in Taipei too. And there, I really was inspired by its food. But it was hard to talk about Taiwanese food, as a food writer, as somebody, in a lot of food groups in New York. There's no Taiwanese food. There's just not a whole lot of, at least accessible information in the English language about Taiwanese food. So I wanted to change that and start somewhere. Yeah.
So you're sharing the secret, actually, of the Taiwanese food with everybody, because not a lot of people know about it, and now you open the door to let everybody come in. So, to introduce this cuisine with everybody.
Yeah, I really want to stress that, I want this book to be the starting point for, much more exploration about Taiwanese food, and I hope a lot of people are empowered to share their version of a recipe, post their own take on it, their own kind of niche or corner about Taiwanese food, and we'll see much more of it, hopefully.
Absolutely, I think that's a really good point, and I think people will definitely, get to know more about the Taiwanese food. And you grew up with two different cultures, and in your book, The Food of Taiwan, you talk about your mother's Taiwanese cooking and your father's cooking adventure. And I especially found the Thanksgiving dinner and in your family, it's a very a beautiful combination of cultures and delicious food. So would you like to talk about your Thanksgiving dinner when you were little, or even now, and what role does your heritage culture play in your family?
Well, my family just really gets excited about cooking on the holidays. We make a huge feast, but what we have done for us is the night before we would have a Chinese feast. So because, my uncle would be in town, maybe somebody else is in town, me and my brother are staying over in town when we were older. So we would always have a huge feast, usually a whole fish, steamed with ginger and scallions, and all different dishes, whatever we felt like at that time, and a soup probably for the night before. And that goes for Christmas too, or any other get-together. And then actually on Thanksgiving, we would make the traditional turkey, mashed potatoes, and everything American.
So it's a celebration of both cultures, the American culture and the Taiwanese culture. And they have all the family to get together. So basically it's a part of your growing up. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and so how about the role of, we talk about the heritage culture because, from the cooking, the family get-together is definitely very important for Taiwanese. And how about the language, the Chinese language? Is that also a part of your, your life when you were younger?
Okay, so my parents, both my American dad speaks fluent Chinese because he studied that in school, and and then he went to Taiwan, and that's where he met my mom. So anyway, so they kind of dropped the ball on teaching Chinese when we were little for, reasons that they thought were totally reasonable at the time. They thought, it might hold us back from being better at English. A lot of people thought that back in those days. So they stopped teaching us, but they kind of treated Chinese as their secret language. So whenever they wanted to discuss something that they didn't want the kids to hear, they would say it in Chinese. So honestly, I grew up hearing it a lot.
So actually, you have that language when you were little. You listen to them, you kind of understand, yeah. And how about your study abroad, the year in Taiwan, where you be able to pick up the language and use it again?
Right. So I tried to take some crash course to live, and I got decent. And then when I was in Taiwan, I continued to take language courses. So I could get by, I could get around. I think that I could hear much better than I can speak, but it was okay. But nowadays, I think when I go back to Taiwan or I'm around it, back in our third week that I'm there, that I really start to pick it up again better. And then lose touch.
Right. It's kind of getting back to the language. And yeah, it's kind of like me when I go back. Sometimes when I visit Hong Kong, I was like, it take me a few days. It's like, oh, I think I'll understand Cantonese a little bit better if I stay there like a 3 to 5 days. I kind of understand a little bit more. I think it applies to any languages. So I would go back to your book. You know, in your book, The Food of Taiwan, you take us on an introduction tour with the beautiful pictures on the history, the people, the land, the climate of Taiwan. And then you lead us into the Taiwanese pantry, the homemade food, the night market, the village, the military village food, and the train bentong food in Taiwan, and much, much more with beautiful pictures. Not only just the delicious dishes come with your recipe, but also the food vendors, the people, the behind the scene places. So would you like to elaborate, you know, all those special food in Taiwan, especially the military village food and the train bentong lunchbox food? I think people will be very interested to understand what those are.
Sure. Well, I wanted to call this book The Food of Taiwan rather than just like Taiwanese food, to represent the whole spectrum of the food that is there. And throughout the book, I want to try to explain or show why it is there. So the social factors, the history, the just everyday kind of lifestyle factors, the environmental factors. So night markets are a big part of that. That's a huge social activity. And then with this largely kind of middle class population, like a very frequent way to grab lunch is the train bento boxes for commuters on the go. And then we have, you know, tea ceremony, which is environmental as well as very cultural. What else did I talk about? Oh, the military villages, history. You know, that is a very interesting part of Taiwan's history, fairly recent. And that I think that that has had such an impact on the food of Taiwan that we see today. The mainland arrival at the late 40s was really instrumental in creating a lot of those weird, unique dishes that we don't see anywhere else but in Taiwan nowadays.
Right. I think the military village actually is a very interesting part of the Taiwan culture, because when we talk about military village food, actually we're talking about during the war back in 1948, that area, and people, because of war, a lot of people from mainland China moved to Taiwan. And then have you tried all that kind of food? Should we call them Chinese for more Chinese food? You know, because they're from mainland China. So we see the food in Taiwan actually is a very mixed with the different kind of regions from China.
But the military villages themselves were a melting pot too. People from all over mainland China, from the north, from the west, from the south, from all different backgrounds. So it was fairly communal living too. So they would blend, you know, cooking styles. And now we have dishes like beef noodle soup, Taiwan's beef noodle soup at least, which a lot of people say was created in a military village, or Zhuangcen.
Well, you know, I never known that actually. You know, it's very interesting because it seems like beef noodle is so popular in Taiwan, and you see it on the street all the time. And then now they even have the beef noodle festival every year in Taiwan. So what is beef noodle? Can you share with us what it is like?
Yeah, so this is a noodle soup, and it is with a very dark, dense beef stock, and it's made with a little bit of tomato, but it's also made with chili bean sauce, or doubanjiang, and Sichuan peppercorn. So those two ingredients make it a little spicy, and they're also very Sichuan. When we think about the ROC, their last place, their last military stronghold for the ROC was Sichuan province, right before they moved to Taiwan. So maybe that had to do with some of the influences of Sichuan food that we find in Taiwan, or it's just some family from Sichuan that like invented this dish. We don't know, but yeah, so definitely was not in Taiwan before, these ingredients. And also the use of wheat noodles. Most of the time in Taiwan, the noodles would be made out of rice. So they'd be rice noodle soups and so forth. That's because Taiwan is very hot and it grows rice, not wheat. But after the mainland arrival, you see all kinds of wheat noodles being made, even like the northern kind, there's like the hand-pulled or shredded ones, which sometimes you see, with the Taiwanese beef noodle soup.
Well, you're making me hungry right here because we're talking about all the food and noodles, the homemade noodles, the pasta, the rice noodles. There are certain things that's hard to get in the States or overseas. How about the night market food? Because you mentioned night market actually is a very social kind of thing in Taiwan. And then when you were studying in Taiwan for the semester, were you a part of the night market, troupe?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like that's what everybody did all the time, every night. And there's so many different night markets too. It's not like Taipei has one. No, they have like 20, different
That's true.
Yeah, and I think that it's hard to explain if you haven't been there what it's like, or just the scale of them. They're really like take over the whole streets at night. They go on forever. It's kind of like a carnival or a festival, but it's every night. And young kids. Some night markets that are close to universities are like the food stands or like the clothing shops will cater to that kind of population. But I think that a lot of people just go to the night markets to eat too and get together with a bunch of friends, co-workers perhaps, grabbing dinner or just browsing through.
Yeah. So totally. I think it's not just one or two vendors. I mean, we're talking about the whole street. Is that correct?
Yeah, the whole street. And not just in one or two cities in Taiwan, in every city in Taiwan too.
Wow. I think when you were doing the book, I found all the pictures, those fantastic pictures, you captured the spirit of the night market, the street food, the cooking, and also the behind scene places. I saw one picture, I think you were visiting the rice noodle place, I believe. And so I think that's all very interesting. Well, tell us a couple of special night market dishes you really love. And I know you also include a lot of recipes in your book.
Let's see. I think that oyster omelet is pretty much like the #1 night market.
Yeah.
Not just night market. You'll see people going to stalls at the daytime, sure, for oyster omelet. But that's just a really great snack. You can eat it just a small amount. It won't fill you up, so you can go and try other things. Let's see. Actually, in every night market, you'll find an old-fashioned type of snack or snacks. You can actually make it a whole meal, but it's a luau. This is a broth that is like 5 spice and soy sauce. And basically you can pick whatever you want to dip into the broth. So chunks of tofu, vegetables, meats, fish balls, meatballs, something like that. And you dip it into this luau broth, or the vendor does, for a little while, pulls it out, and gives it to you this hot and steamy and flavorful mixed bag of, it's like a smorgasbord of whatever you picked. That's very
Well, I don't know. I mean, seriously, I think talking about food just make you feel like, it's so comforting. And also, I also think you also talk about the place like a stinky tofu. These are the things we won't make at home. But what is stinky tofu? Because it's so popular in Taiwan. And like you said, like my mom, when she was little, she was also chasing after those stinky tofu carts. But what is it? Why is it so popular in Taiwan?
So it's really just has a flavor that is so irresistible. And it's basically tofu, but then it's fermented in a brine that is just this fermented stinky brine that it sits there for sometimes just a week, sometimes months, to varying degrees of stinkiness for the tofu. I found, because I really wanted to make a recipe for stinky tofu in this cookbook, So I, you know, went around and asked people, tried to kind of get in there and, you know, just investigate how to make stinky tofu. But what I found was it tends to be like a trade secret amongst makers, how they make their stinky tofu brine, what's in it. And that makes sense. It's not like, you know, in Europe, cheeses are made one way and it's very regimented. So like, yes, if you make it this way, it is brie. Otherwise, you cannot call it brie or something like that. That's not the case for stinky tofu. Every maker has their own sort of recipe. So I kind of gathered what, for the most part, made up the brine. But when I got down to it, I realized that this is really a factory or industrial project for someone in a home kitchen, unless you want to have in your home for weeks. A lot of people would want to do that.
Almost a little bit kind of like the Korean kimchi. Everybody has a barrel in the back of their balcony, and their own flavor, different degrees of spiciness and different degree of smell. Can we compare, you know, kind of like the similarity? Is there a similarity there?
Yeah, that's a fermented product, and you can let it go. And actually, sometimes the Koreans, moms will add like oysters to it. Sometimes no oysters, you know, something like that. But, you know, I let myself go on the stinky tofu recipe just because I did have so many ingredients or recipes in here that were very from scratch. So I have the fermented mustard green pickles and homemade cha-cha sauce. So hopefully those are fun DIY projects that people can try.
I think that will be a lot of fun for people to make at home with their kids. Actually, the Food of Taiwan, this book, and you know, has a wonderful collection of recipe with stories. I think with stories, why do I need to say that? Because I think the stories really makes all the recipes very special. And then because you introduced the people and you see the pictures of the vendors and the people who are cooking, I think that really makes this cookbook very different from a lot of cookbooks I have read. And I can also tell this book is written with great affection. I have to say, probably this is the first cookbook I have read, and I not only feel hungry when I read a book, I also feel very touched. My kids, my son is 11, my daughter is 9 years old. They have been taking away my book, and then I found the book in the kitchen or in their bedrooms. And my daughter, I think just 2 nights ago, she was eating snack and she said, "Ooh, do you think we need to try to make this mango, the shredded, I believe the shaved ice mango dessert?" And she found that's very interesting, and she's been going through page to page and will tell me, you know, what she wants to try. So definitely, you know, when you write this book, I can tell, you know, you this is written with great affection. So do you have anything you want to share with us, you know, like things you have collected in Taiwan, or things, you know, you cook with, or ingredients, special ingredients not a lot of people know about for Taiwanese cooking?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you appreciate the photos and the stories in the book. Just to back up a little bit, like I really like older cookbooks that kind of explore a culture in addition to the food. And I just wanted to kind of take that route. So not all the photos are a totally staged photography of the food or recipe. It's really like capturing the place and the time. And I wanted to do that because I felt like maybe not all people know what Taiwan even looks like. And it's so beautiful, you know, gorgeous. It's exciting. Every corner has a different kind of feel to it. So thank you very much.
We really
Yeah, so I wanted to share that. And when it comes to kind of like tips about things you need, you know, I gotta tell you, my mom was very minimal to kitchen stuff. So, you know, she would use a large pan most of the time, not necessarily a wok. And I feel like you can adapt and make any of these dishes work wherever you are. So the great thing about Taiwanese food is that there's not a whole lot of must-have weird, crazy, esoteric spices or like pastes and like sauces that you need to hunt down. everything can be found in a pretty mid-sized Asian grocery, or even in a large American grocery with like an international shelf. You can find the rice vinegar. You hopefully can find rice wine or sake at a liquor store. And, you know, some 5-spice powder should be easy to find. So this is not a terribly difficult to find range of products that you need to have at home. And I liked, because, you know, in Taiwan, they have a totally different climate. So you have amazing fruits and interesting vegetables. So I didn't want to, you know, make a whole cookbook of recipes for ingredients that you couldn't find. So I tried to provide substitutions wherever needed. And I think that that's totally doable. Like, for instance, instead of soup, sigua, or no, that's watermelon. Sigua, I think, is you know, the gourd, the spongy gourd.
Yes.
Loofah gourd, that's it. Okay. So instead of that, you can use summer squash for a dish, and because that's what we have here. Or you might be able to find the sponge gourd or loofah gourd in a Chinese market. But, you know, using with substitutions is what people did when they came to Taiwan anyway. So you're kind of just carrying on that tradition.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the most important part. You know, we feel like, okay, maybe Taiwan is very far away from us, but because of the substitution of the ingredients, actually it's very close to your heart. You can give it a try, and then you can have very authentic a dish, you know, on the table in a very short time. And well, now I'm going to talk about, you know, you growing up hapa, half Caucasian, half Taiwanese, and you embrace your culture, your heritage culture. So from your own experience growing up, what makes your hapa mixed race identity strong and positive?
You know, growing up, I didn't really know that there was that was an identity that I could embrace. I think that me and my brother really we had this like coming of age sort of like in college, actually, when we met other people. It's a bigger place, and you realize that you are part of this community of people who are having the same dilemmas as you. I mean, and sharing those interesting stories. A lot of it having to do with food. I found that was really a fun way to explore the mixed race culture, was talking about how, for instance, I would have in my lunchbox like a sandwich with like roast pork sauce in sandwich between white bread, and that would be my lunch, and that was like the weirdest thing because like nobody else had this. And how I would eat like stew eggs also in my lunch, and that was like my favorite thing. So I think that, you know, exploring food through the lens of being mixed race was really inspiring for me. And there's a lot of other ways you can kind of create community around being hapa or mixed race. And apparently, well, my brother founded like the first hapa or mixed, whatever. It was like the hapa student community club in Cornell. And now that's really keeping on, you know, growing. And most of the college campuses, at least the large ones, I find also have a hapa student association or a mixed race student association. So it's something that is definitely growing. And today's kids too, we're gonna see a lot more hapas.
Yes, I mean, we lived in Hawaii for many years, so there are hapa kids everywhere. You know, in the school, my kids feel very comfortable, and then we moved back to mainland, and they were like, oh, they kind of find out that maybe they're a little bit different. But I think parents now are open-minded, and then, like you said, there are more hapa kids, mixed race kids, and so, well, I know you don't have kids, and then, but what is your top advice for, you know, parents who are raising hapa or mixed race children at this age, at this time?
Well, okay, if we're talking about raising it in America, I think that it really is helpful to explore the Asian heritage a lot, just so that it's not something that is, it feels like an outsider to the kids, or and also so that they can take pride in it. So everything from holidays and celebrations, and hopefully the language a little bit too. I think that that's really rewarding. It is something that I have come to really appreciate. My parents exposed me to a lot more in my adulthood. I feel much more connected than, you know, growing up in America. It's all too easy to just go with the flow of American culture. So I feel really grateful that I had a lot of Chinese food, for example, and I learned how to cook it at home. So also cooking is really important because I meet so many Asian Americans nowadays who are like coming to my cooking classes because they're like, I need to explore my heritage because I never bothered to cook at home. So just remember, your kids are going to be coming back around in their 20s and they're going to try to ask you how to make a stir fry. So start out, you know, play around with food and cooking early on. That goes for just too with cooking, I think.
Food, I mean, when we talk about food, it's talking about happiness. We're talking about joy. And then I think definitely, I agree with you. I think all the food you had when we were younger, you were talking about your lunchbox, you had something very different from other kids. I think that's a part of you. Now you probably look back, you say, that's me. Actually, I am different, but I'm unique and I'm proud of that. And then, you know, two cultures, or some families, even their kids, you know, are growing up with even multicultural background. So I think food is definitely an easy way to create your own family history and family stories. And so everybody cooking. And so before we wrap it up, Cathy, do you have anything you would like to add?
I love seeing, well, I do have the Food of Taiwan Facebook page. I love seeing what people think, and also keeping in touch. Right now is a very interesting time for Taiwan with the elections coming up in 2016. I just love hearing more voices and more perspectives, and hopefully we'll keep the conversation going about food in Taiwan in general.
Great. Thank you so much, Cathy, for sharing your new book, The Food of Taiwan, Recipes from the Beautiful Island, and your culture background and your heritage culture with us. And so everybody, keep cooking in your kitchen or beyond and having fun with your kids in the kitchen. Pass on your heritage culture to your child and explore new culture experience, cooking Taiwanese food, for example, and enjoy all the beautiful moments with your children and then share cultures together. For our audience, thank you very much for joining us today and watching this episode of interview with Miss Panda. And goodbye, Cathy. Well, good luck to you. And don't forget to check out our page on the website, and then link up with Cathy and her The Food of Taiwan Facebook page. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Bye.